times I really don't know if I want to review a video game. Not because I don't enjoy doing it, but because I'm afraid that my criticisms won't stay true to my own opinions. In the past, I've said some things that I didn't really mean, and I said them because I wanted to appease the people who enjoy those games. And sometimes I would say it just to convince myself that it was true, but I should never really neglect what my mind is truly telling me. I had this very same dilemma as I was trying to review a game called Shenmue on the Sega Dreamcast. And until just recently, I had never played Shenmue before, and when I first played it, I thought it was really unique. There were so many things that just pulled me into the game, but then there were so many things that just pushed me right out of it, and I had so many mixed feelings about this game. I seriously wanted to enjoy this game to its fullest, but it just didn't leave an impact on me as it did to the seasoned veterans who grew up with it. And to know why I feel these emotions, you're just gonna have to sit back and watch the review. But before that, let's do a little bit of history. Near the end of Sega Saturn's life, it was speculated that Yu Suzuki, the game developer for many Sega classics such as Space Harrier and Virtua Fighter, was making an RPG called Virtua Fighter RPG, which would feature many of the game's beloved characters, with the main character being Akira. But after Sega shoved the Saturn into the dump and came out with the Sega Dreamcast, some way down the line, Virtua Fighter RPG ended up becoming Shenmue. When comparing the beta picture of Akira and the main character Ryo in Shenmue, it is obvious to see why many people came up with this conclusion. On December 1999, Shenmue had finally came out into the public eye of Japan, and was later released in North America on November 2000. Shenmue's release brought critical appraisal, because at the time, the only consoles that were out was the PlayStation 1 and the N64. It was because of this that Shenmue had got its sequel, Shenmue 2, which was released in Japan and Europe in 2001, but its presence was not felt, because a steam train was heading the Dreamcast way, for on March of 2000, the giant behemoth that was the PlayStation 2 came rolling in and knocked Sega out of the hardware business. Later on, Shenmue 2 was ported to the Xbox for North America, but was ignored, and it was because of these poor sales that Shenmue was discontinued. And the tragic thing is, it was originally planned that Shenmue would have 3 games. But till this day, a sequel to give closure to all of Shenmue's fans never came about, banishing Shenmue to obscurity. The story of Shenmue takes place in Yokosuka, Japan, where our young protagonist Ryo runs home to find a black car parked in the driveway. When he enters the premise of his home, he finds his housekeeper Ine-san huddling on the ground and warns him that his father is in trouble. He then enters the dojo where his father is fighting a guy named Lan Di. Lan Di demands Ryo's father to give him the Dragon Mirror. After he refuses, Lan Di threatens his son's life, causing him to give up the mirror. Lan Di then kills Ryo's father and leaves. Ryo is devastated by this new development and vows that one day he will get revenge for his father. 4 days later, Ryo stops being emo and decides to investigate in order to find his dad's killer. So you must ask around the people of Yokosuka about that day.
About that day.
That day? The day of the incident.
That day of the incident. On that day. Did you see a black car that day? That day. On that day. Or the day when the snow changed to rain.
Detective Ryo on the case. The story is very lackluster. I find the revenge trope in the narrative of many media to be very unrelatable, which detracts from the viewer ever connecting with the character. And that's one of the reasons why I dislike Ryo. You can't understand his motive, neither can you agree with him. He's foolish and tries to achieve a goal that will give him no closure in the end. He's completely way in over his head, and it's because of this that his friends get hurt. And after seeing how his own goals can affect others, he still finds himself justified to continue on. Not to mention, Ryo doesn't show emotion at all. Instead, you get a stoic face, which just looks stupid in some scenes.
I don't have no more. Please, leave me be.
Huh? No more? Don't mess with me!
Stop it!
But that's not all. I also feel the game's attempt at evoking emotion to the player failed due to one glaring issue.
Hi, Hirata-san.
Ryo, how's Ine-san being doing? I hope everyone is well.
I saw a guy wearing this weird coat.
What kind of coat?
It was a deep green, maybe velvet. Hi. What can I get you?
I'm looking for some sailors.
Sailors? Well, I always see them near bars. Yo, dude!
Oh, you.
Seem a bit blue, my man? Got a problem? Then I'm your man!
Yes, unfortunately, the English dub for this game is absolutely crap. I'm just baffled by this English dub. Like, how in the world can someone be that bad at voice acting? It may not be Resident Evil 1 bad.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But unlike Resident Evil 1, this game is trying to take things more seriously. Shenmue tries to envelop emotions within the player, but for me, the voice acting ruined it. Sure, I was able to get used to it and just accepted how things are, but deep down inside, I couldn't get fully involved with the story. I would guess that if I had played this game at the time, I would have been swayed by this game's story, but when I look at it now through a perspective where I've seen games that have done this kind of plotline better, I just can't like it. Overall, though, the story was okay, and I could say it was engaging enough to at least keep me playing. Even when this game had ended on a cliffhanger, I was still satisfied. Even though the story was on par at best, it wasn't the reason why I was even intrigued to play this game in the first place. The first time you get to control Ryo is in your house, and it is here that you get your first taste of what this game has to offer. You see, in Shenmue, you can explore and interact with almost anything. Like, for example, there's a bowl of oranges on this table. If you so will it, you can pick up an orange and examine it. And why, you may ask? Well, why not? See a dresser? Why not open that up as well? And see if there are any clues or miscellaneous items that you can get. I kid you not, I literally spent the first 30 minutes of the game just opening up every drawer and exploring my limits within the confines of my own house. And then when it was finally time, I took my first step outside my residence and graced my eyes on the environments and was just astounded by how vast and real it felt. There may have been only 4 environments that you could explore, but each one had enough in it that you really felt you were among the society. There were places like Sakuragaoka, a residential area where you find kids staring intently at the capsule machines, women gossiping, and people maintaining their yards. Then from there it gets even bigger when you enter into Dobuita, a huge commercial area teeming with a whole cast of non-playable characters bustling about in the city, running errands, running their own businesses, or just plain causing trouble. And on top of that, this game had a random weather system where on occasions it would rain and snow. And on top of that, a day and night system, which further added to the immersion of living in this community. This may not seem impressive now, but at the time, there may have been only a couple of games that did something similar to this. But even now, Shenmue's environments are pretty impressive and unique. It kind of gave me that same feeling as I was exploring the people and environments in Zelda Majora's Mask. Except that no one dies. That's a big thing. Not to mention, all of this was in Japan, a country that is littered with diverse culture and environments, something that we don't get enough of in Canada. And as Ryo, you are among this community, where you'll be making inquiries about certain leads that may lead you closer to your father's killer. Sometimes you may have such a small lead that you'll find yourself asking every available person where to go next. And when you do finally get your next lead, you may have to wait for certain events to unfold, which leaves Ryo with nothing to do. So what can you do until then? I know what I like to do when I'm bored. Play me some video games. And you can do just that. After exploring Dobuita a little more, you will run across an arcade where you can play such games as Hang On, 2 Quick Time Events, Darts, and my personal favorite, Space Harrier. I found myself playing this game whenever I had to wait, and as I progressed further within Shenmue, I had further progressed in Space Harrier, though in the end I still couldn't beat it. I guess that's why it was in the arcade. As I settled myself further in the game, I found myself getting into a routine like I would in real life. Getting up at 8:30 in the morning, going to the shrine in Yamanose to feed the cat, asking questions and spending my free time playing Space Harrier. Then around 7 I would head home, buy some dry fish for the cat, and feed it before I retired to my bed. The game barely has times where it would get monotonous, since every day you would end up somewhere else, such as a bar, restaurants, and sometimes get in a scuffle with some bad eggs. Despite the emphasis on exploration and asking people about certain things, there will be times within the game where you get yourself into fights with people, and Shenmue had its own fighting system filled with a lot of varied fighting techniques that you can learn to devastate your opponent. However, these moments are quite scarce until the very end of the game where it gets more intense, which made it a little hard to adapt. Besides fighting though, there are also moments within the cutscenes where you have to perform, quick time events. I can't tell you how much I dislike this mechanic, and during the time of Shenmue's release, I believe it was one of the first use of quick time events, so it is slightly excused. Plus, it wasn't too much of a bother, but it's still kind of annoying when I have to rewatch a cutscene just because a command prompt came on screen for a split second and I missed it. Now, in the last few hours of the game, you're going to find yourself in a harbor where you find a clue that leads you to get a job. And what job is that? A mother frickin' forklift truck driver. Yes? I found this to be the best part in the game. Every day you would have a different location to haul a certain number of crates to a warehouse. And as stupid as this sounds, it was fun as hell. It made me feel like a working man. And it gets even better. At the beginning of each day before work, you get to have a forklift race. This wins everything. Overall, I'm quite pleased with the gameplay. There are just two flaws that kind of detract from the game. The first one was at times waiting for your next objective would get too extensive. Like for example, there was one day where I had to meet a guy at 3 PM. So I had to wait for that time to come, and then there was a small cutscene. And then I had to wait till the next day to progress. So I had to wait until nightfall because you can't sleep until 8. Then the next day I would have to wait a few more in-game hours to go to the next event. It just keeps on adding on, and it seems to me as a little ploy to expand the overall playtime of the game. The second flaw is that the controls feel really stiff. The reason for this is because you cannot move your character with the analog stick, because they use it for analyzing the environment. So to move your character, you need to use the D-pad. I cannot stress enough on how this gets on my nerves. If you have ever played any of the old Resident Evil games, I'm sure you can sympathize. I got used to it after a while, but there was still this layered frustration that would hang on me as I moved freely about. Aside from these flaws, the game is still great to play. It's just because of these flaws that you may not be inclined to play this game to its fullest, and it prevents me from calling Shenmue an exhilarating experience, just a good one. The last thing I would like to talk about is Shenmue's masterful soundtrack. Most of the tracks were arranged really well, and despite the fact that the voice acting can ruin emotions in the game, the music on the other hand kind of balanced it out a bit. Most of the tracks had that Japanese style to it, and I really like a lot of Japanese music. It always seems to bring about more emotion than I would with Western music. But that's just me. Shenmue's soundtrack was just littered with heart-wrenching songs that would make me feel sad, and that's pretty powerful unto itself. What does it all mean, this world that I've entered? Shenmue. At the end of the game, I had a feeling of departure. There was nothing left for me, and everyone was gone. As I walked the streets of Dobuito one last time, I remember all the moments, from bad to good. Despite what I had initially thought throughout the game, as I reflect upon these moments, nothing really matters. I got over all the bad voice acting and stiff controls, and I just tried to enjoy the game as much as I could. Sure, the story was nothing special and I couldn't care less about it, but in the end, it was never the story that pulled me in. It was the environment. It was the illusion of escaping to another place that felt similar to reality, but wasn't really at all. This place was Yokosuka. A place I will probably never return to again, but a place I will remember as I tread new waters and look for a new horizon. In conclusion, Shenmue is a great game for anybody looking for a unique game, but it's only good for the first time around because I feel the second playthrough won't be as unique. But with all that said, thank you for watching my video, and I hope all of you have a fantastic day.